So match preview, Crystal Palace versus West Ham. And let's be honest, our sort of last throw of the dice this season, really, the Premier League, as we are now out of the Europa League, as we know, having exited this week thanks to our overall loss to Bayer Leverkusen. Obviously, it was a draw at the London Stadium. But it leaves West Ham in a position now where everything is now riding on us getting European football for next season. That's the only thing that would realistically make this season a successful one overall. There's a lot to do, a real lot to do for West Ham, and they've got to start getting some results. At the end of the day, we need now wins where we possibly wouldn't be expected to get wins. And it then adds enormous amounts of pressure to games where we've got more of a chance in terms of our position. And I'm referring to this weekend. Crystal Palace is a must-win game for West Ham now. It's as simple as that. Lose that game, even drawing it almost puts us out of Europe at any chance, really. So it's a hugely important fixture. And one that's going to be tough because Crystal Palace are coming off a huge victory against Liverpool last weekend. They're rested. And West Ham have just, slogged their guts out against Bayer Leverkusen in the week. So it's going to be a very, very tough encounter. One that at the moment, it's hard to see how West Ham are going to get out of this with 3 points. But that's not to say we won't, of course. Let's talk about Crystal Palace first, though. I find them a really strange side, Crystal Palace, I've got to be honest, in terms of a club. Because, and I know, the reason I say this is because I know a couple of their fans. I've got a couple of mates that are Crystal Palace fans. And they make it very clear to me that there is a huge frustration around the football club at the moment in that they struggle to see the direction, struggle to see the ambition. And I think that was felt when they brought back Roy Hodgson. It was like a big step back. They brought in Patrick Vieira, of course. I felt that he was harshly dismissed by the club. I felt that he had a real tough run of fixtures. I mean, he sort of got his way through it. It didn't do great, but the team weren't performing that badly. It was just against, as I say, very, very tough opposition. And then they sacked him and then brought in Roy Hodgson. And then they had a run of fixtures whereby this is last season, of course, where they could pick up points. And they then did. And it was then they sort of said it as if, look, that's justified the move. But I don't know. I did feel like it was a bit of a step backwards. And I think that was certainly felt amongst the fans of Crystal Palace. I mean, there might be Palace fans watching this and saying that's totally wrong. If that's the case, let me know. But that's certainly the impression I get. And as I say, after speaking to a couple of fans that I know, that's what they've advised me as well. So I can understand that because when you think of Crystal Palace, you think, a stable Premier League side, been up pretty much for a fair amount of years now. But you don't really consider them for Europe. You don't really consider them for challenging for top six. You don't really. It's like they're always sort of this mid-ground side. It's hard to see what really the plan is. And they've obviously brought in Oliver Glasner now this season to replace Hodgson, former Frankfurt manager, of course, who we had our run-in with a couple of seasons ago. I think it was a pretty decent move. I do feel like it was a step forward. I think it breathed a bit of excitement into the club. I've not really seen much of it. I'm going to be honest. I feel like we didn't really see a manager bounce from Glasner at all. I was expecting, I don't know, a bit of oomph, a bit of excitement, but I've not really seen it. And even when I've watched Crystal Palace games, I've not seen the excitement really even amongst the fans. I just don't really feel it at the moment. But that being said, the result against Liverpool was a massive one at Anfield. They're a falling Liverpool side, actually. When you look at the record, I think the amount of times Liverpool have lost at Anfield over the last few years, I think Crystal Palace have won half of them. They've been really remarkable record there. Unlike West Ham, who I think won once in about 100 years. Ridiculous. But this is it's been a really interesting period for the club because you're waiting to see what's going to happen. I'm not having a go at Glasner at all, by the way, because he's only been in the job 5 minutes. He's inherited a squad, so I wasn't. When I say I was expecting a manager bounce. I wasn't suddenly expecting them to be, challenging top six. But I was just expecting a bit more excitement out of it. Really, expecting a bit more than what we've seen so far. But possibly we're going to see that in the summer when he's now got a bit of time to put his ideas over, get the players in he wants, and I'll get a feeling there's going to be a fair amount of rebuild going on at Crystal Palace this summer, much like there will be at West Ham. It's a new manager and he'll want to make his mark, you know what I mean, and make it his own side. So it's going to be interesting, but I get the feeling, much like Patrick Vieira, I get the feeling that Glasner's going to be under pressure early on next season if they don't start off well. I think that they'll be going, well, what's the point of this move? So that's the pressure he'll be under. But no, look, last weekend was a big win for Crystal Palace because it's one that pretty much all but secures their safety now in the Premier League. I can't see them going down. I did actually look at the fixture list, and obviously looking at that Liverpool game, I was assuming that Liverpool would beat Palace. And then you look at the other games coming up for them, including us, really. I mean, considering the fact that we're trying to challenge to get into Europe next season, I was struggling to see where they were going to be getting their points enough to survive, because they could easily have been dragged into it. But I think that 3 points at Anfield has just pretty much given them now that cushion to avoid any sort of drop. So whether that'll play in our favour, I don't know, or whether they're now going to have that momentum to try and get another 3 points. They'll certainly be looking at this fixture, I'm certain, thinking, look, this is an opportunity for us to get a win, and if we get this win, we're safe. So it's a huge game, but it's a big game for West Ham as well. I talked about the summer already with Palace. I think that they're going to see fundamental changes, and I think that includes losing two of their best players in Eze and Elise. I can't see them staying at the club personally. I think that'll be quite surprised if they both remain. If both of them remain, I'll be stunned. At least one of them's going to go, in my opinion, and I think they probably need to go, because if Glasner's going to have this rebuild and want to bring in his own players, he's going to need funds. And Crystal Palace, notoriously, they don't spend big money. Palace, they haven't really done that, and they do struggle in that regard. I think they struggle to attract that sort of high level player at times. So I think for Glasner then to go to the market and get the players he wants, he's going to need a fair amount to spend. So you look at a kind of easy way to get some funds in for the football club, obviously then to adhere to financial fair play, would be to sell one of those players, if not both of them. So it's going to be a big one for him. But as I say, I think next season's going to be testing for them, and in testing for Glasner, because he's going to have to deliver very, very quickly, because I think there's certainly an amount of unrest among Crystal Palace. I think the fans at the moment, they want to see some progression. They want to see something. They want to see some direction from this football club, because an outsider looking in, Palace don't really seem to have much in terms of direction. They never really seem to have this kind of you can see what they're trying to do. It feels like the aim at Crystal Palace, the objective every season is don't get relegated. And it's the same year on year. It doesn't ever change. And I can understand that must become, don't get me wrong, when you first get promoted, when you look at teams like Burnley's this season and Luton's, and certainly Nottingham Forest are in that category at the moment, where their objective is to stay up. They're not fussed about top half finishes, and not, don't get me wrong, if it can get it, great. But ultimately, their main aim is to just keep our Premier League status, and we keep trying to build. I feel like with Crystal Palace, you're kind of past that phase now. Do you know what I mean? It's like you've been in the Premier League long enough. Surely now the aim should be that we want a top half finish. We want to do this. We want to go and win a trophy. We want to do something. But you just don't feel it. So I get the feeling that if they start off next season slow and struggle to get going and get those points on the board, you can imagine the fans would become very frustrated with the situation. Already touched on a couple of their players that are, Eze and Elise are their top players, and they're remarkably talented. And I'd happily have both of them at West Ham, of course. I think they'll be going on to other clubs though. But I mean, they are exceptionally good players. Injury prone though, the only issue I would say, I mean, they always seem to have issues in regards to having a long-term run of games. They always seem to be stuttering and starting in terms of picking up knocks, etc. But they are still unbelievable talents for the club, and they will be sorely missed if they are sold this summer. Jordan Ayew, I can't get over how this player is still going. It always feels like he's been around for about 20 years, isn't he, in the Premier League? He's there all the time. But he's still a key player, and fair play to him. Obviously we had his brother, didn't we, at West Ham? And I mean, he's one of them players I always sort of think that he's done. I think he's not going to play much of a role now. What impact can he have? But he's still there. And when I've watched him this season and the limited games I have seen Crystal Palace, I've been pretty impressed with him. I think he's been all right. He's a hard-working player. And yeah, I mean, can't say too negative about him, really. He's still going, and it's quite remarkable. They brought in that Franca, didn't they, from Brazil, the young lad. I think there was a fair bit of hype about him. Be interested to see how he progresses now and what becomes this player, because he's got now a bit of Premier League experience. He's getting used to the pace of the game. I think, again, like the manager, like I say, it'd be nice to see how he's going to now fare. Now he's going to have a pre-season under his belt, but I know there's certainly an amount of high hopes for him, and they had to fight off a fair amount of competition to bring him in. So that'll be a player to watch, I think. And then you got Mark Gay as well, of course, England player, great player for Crystal Palace. I do think he's possibly unavailable for this game though, which is going to be a boost for West Ham. Let's go on to West Ham though. We talked about Crystal Palace enough. I think it's time to talk about the side now that are wouldn't say clutching at straws, a bit harsh, isn't it? But it feels like, I talked about this in the previous video, like the flames starting to burn out on this season. We're in danger of that, and especially this weekend. I think defeat at Selhurst Park would pretty much rule West Ham out of European football for next season. I really do. I've said it a number of times. I think the target for our points tally had to be sort of 60 points. Soon after, I realised we wouldn't be getting that. So I was thinking, well, 57, 58 would have to be it. And it might be enough to get 7th. But I'm struggling to see it now. I'm struggling to see us getting those points because you look at the fixtures we've got left. We had to beat Fulham. Had we beaten Fulham, I'd be feeling more confident. I'd be feeling, do you know what, that 3 points. But that loss to Fulham and that loss that we had at Newcastle, I think they're the 2 games that have absolutely dented our chances. I'm not saying we're not going to do it. I'm not saying it's completely over. But you look at this game this weekend, and this is a must win for West Ham. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a tough ask. But on the flip side of that, we've got a decent record at Selhurst Park. We seem to have pulled out some good performances there over the years and got results over the line. So let's hope West Ham can do it again. It's all or nothing now for West Ham. This is it. These last few games in the Premier League season are vital. We've got a few tough games coming up. We've got Liverpool, of course, next weekend at home. It's not going to be easy. We've then got, obviously, Man City last game of the season. But in between that, we've obviously got Luton as well. We've got these last few games. The Crystal Palace and Luton game are vital. Also, Chelsea as well away. We're going to need to pick up some points somewhere at a place where we're probably not expected to. We're going to possibly have to beat a Liverpool or beat a Chelsea. That's where we are at now. And have to beat Palace and have to beat Luton. It's a tall order. It's a tall order when you consider the amount of wins we've got this season since the turn of the year. I think it's 4. It's not good enough, And so then you're asking a team that have won in 4 months, 4 games, to suddenly they're going, right, we'll now win 4 of your last few games of the season in the last few weeks. It's a really tall order and a tough ask for West Ham. But this is the position we're in. We've thrown points away, and this is where you are, isn't it? You pay that price. I don't want to keep moaning about the squad depth. I feel like I'm sort of a bit of a broken record, to be honest, going on about it. I'm boring myself talking about it. But it can't be ignored, can it? It can't be ignored that West Ham are in a position where we are struggling so badly with fatigue, injuries, all these things. It's because we don't have a big enough squad. And the club have allowed that to happen. The season's burning out because of that. It's a key factor. There's no way I'm going to be swayed from thinking any other way about this. The reason we are in this predicament now, i.e. out of Europe, and don't get me wrong, right? I'm not saying that it's a disgrace we're out of Europe. Just go back to the team that are dominating Europe and have not lost in 44 games, whatever it is. There's no disgrace in that. And I imagine that you look at Leverkusen, they've just won the league. They're probably going to go and win the Europa League now, and they're probably going to win the domestic cup, and they're probably going to go and do very well next season in the Champions League. So it's no disgrace for West Ham. But what my point is that we're in such a predicament now where we are desperate to get some points over the board, and we've got a team that are exhausted and carrying injury. And we've got no other alternatives because we haven't invested properly. It's incredibly frustrating. We are in danger here of going out of Europe for next season, and it'll be our first season in a while that we haven't competed in European football. But that's not to say we won't compete. We can still get in it, but it's a tough ask, isn't it? Let's not get away from it. It's a real tough ask. We're going to need results to go our way. We're going to have to get results as well ourselves and places where we didn't expect it. But I'll tell you what, Crystal Palace must win. Must win. A draw there is not good enough. A draw there is as good as a defeat. We've got to win. And it's hard to see it at the moment. Hard to see it. That's not to say we won't. That's not to say we won't. Let's talk about the squad quickly before I do the lineup, what I want to see, and also what I predict the score to be. Jared Bowen, of course, returned from injury against Bayer Leverkusen. As far as I understand it, I don't know the details of it all. I believe he was given painkilling injections in his back to deal with the situation. I thought he actually played really well, to be honest with that. But that does also leave question marks over now. Is he going to be fit for Crystal Palace? My gut tells me he will be. I can't see West Ham playing him on Thursday, then resting him because of the enormity of these games now. We haven't got the luxury of going, Jared, rest up, mate. We're going to put in this other player. Who's this other player? We don't have anyone. They're not good enough. Or we don't have options, really. So that's the position we're in. Alphonse Areola, as far as I understand it, is now available, which is fantastic news. Don't get me wrong, really been pleased with Fabianski. I don't think he's really put too much of a foot wrong, apart from the first goal, I think, against Leverkusen away from home. I think he should have dealt with that better. But ultimately, I think he's done a good job overall. But yeah, Areola will be back as far as I understand it. And obviously got Mavropanos is a doubt. So I think I'm putting it down that he's not going to be available, but I don't know enough about it just yet, whether he's actually going to be able to be selected. But we've also got the returning Lucas Paqueta, which is a huge boost. We've got Emerson back in the squad, so available because obviously they were suspended, weren't they, for the European game? So we've got a pretty decent squad available, pretty decent and enough. But we just played Thursday night, and we saw the effort they put in. It was hard work, and they were exhausted at the end. So it's hard to see how we're going to be able to get up to a certain level of energy against a side like Crystal Palace, who have just beaten Liverpool and they had a week off. You know what I mean? Preparing for this and not having to play competitive football. So they're going to have the edge over us in terms of energy. So we're going to have to be really, really up for this one. But there is the silver lining, of course. Now we're out of Europe. The only silver line you get with it is now that we can just focus on Premier League football, and we haven't got games in midweek. We can now go, right, let's just focus on the games we've got left. But yeah, it's going to be bloody tough. This is my team. I want to know yours. Let me know what you think, what you're going to go for. This is mine. I'm going to put Areola in goal, Soufal at the right back, Zuma and Ogbonna, assuming that Mavropanos is unavailable, as my defensive duo, with Emerson at left back. Midfield of Alvarez and Souček. I'm then going to have Lucas Paqueta playing as a number 10 role in the central role and sort of dictating things there. I want Jared Bowen out on the right. I'm going to put Kudus out on the left and Mikel Antonio up front. I mean, we don't have other options. That's the problem. I can't feel comfortable in making too many changes because we need our best team playing, don't we? Let's be honest. We haven't got the luxury of resting the players and thinking we'll rest them fit. This is a must-win game. We've got to play our best players, but I worry about the energy levels of these players and I worry about injury. But what can we do? This is the position we're in. Despite my sort of negative tone, right? Despite my kind of, anxiety, let's say, regarding this game, I've got a feeling we're going to win. I don't know why. I've got this feeling we're going to nick the win here. I've got a feeling West Ham are going to nick a vital 3 points. When David Moyes is up against it and sort of like back to all, he tends to respond. We tend to get something. I've got a feeling we will. I've just got this feeling we will. I really hope we do because a defeat there would be a nail in the coffin. It would be really, really difficult to see how West Ham at all got any chance at all getting top 7 because we're going to need top 7 now. Top 8, I don't think it's going to be enough anyway. So it's a real tough ask for West Ham. But if we can get the 3 points in this game, it breathes life back into the season, and then it gives us that belief that, do you know what, if we can just beat Liverpool, we can just go and get something at Chelsea, something like that, and then it could be on. But it's going to be very, very tough. But I still think we're going to win it. I'm going to go Palace 1, West Ham 2. That's my guess. I'd like to know your one. Of course, by the way, if you get the guess right, you win something from our shop. So you might as well just do that. And you've got to be a subscriber. So if you're not a subscriber, click subscribe, free to do so. It's a big game, this one. Let's keep this season alive, please. Come on, you Irons.